Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jose. I'll be your host for today on our 8th webinar. I'm joined by Gustavo Marchand, the Managing Director here at Blazedpath. We are happy to announce today's webinar. Say hi, Gustavo.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our 8th webinar. We are going to cover today some of the features of the new release of the latest Blazedpath release. The main ones of which are the fact that now we can control all customization logic with keyboard. We'll see how that works for developers. And then we'll see how we've added debugging tools to debug in real time while you emulate the execution of your application on your desktop. And finally, we'll be seeing how we can deploy Blazedpath builds on GoogleCloud directly from our cloud service. From our cloud service deployed directly on GoogleCloud. So yeah, we think we have a few interesting topics to cover today.
Thank you, Gustavo. So let's jump over to the table of contents just for a quick overview for today. But before that, remember that if you register for today's webinar, upon activating your Blazedpath account, you will get an extra 5,000 credits for your builds and deploys. And it's a very nice opportunity to get involved in the Blazedpath suite. The link is in the description. Just remember you have 24 hours to do so, and also please help us with the subscriptions and the likes on the video. So let's jump over directly onto the table of contents. Just for the quick overview, we are actually going to cover this in the upside order. We are first going to go over a couple of keyboard shortcuts so that you see how to program without the need for the mouse. Then we are going to do a couple of examples for debugging. You'll see the call stacks, the variable inspectors, and we have the console while you're debugging, like any other debugging tool. And then we're going to go through a quick example on the Google Cloud deploy, and we're going to go over the prerequisites that you have to comply in order to actually be able to do the deploy with no problem. So let's start with the keyboard shortcuts for today. I'm going to jump over to my desktop, and we are going to be using our lovely quizzes application. This application, remember, it's on a playlist as a tutorial built from scratch. If you want to follow along on how to build this application, there's the full tutorial in the channel. So we are going to use this application just to showcase a couple of functions, and so that you can see how it works and how you can actually do the keyboard shortcuts, so you have something to work with. So I'm going to be centering on this microservice today. The reason I'm going to be executing the debugs and the keyboard shortcuts in here is because it's just helpful to do everything from the start function of the microservice, so we don't have to wait until everything runs and we can see all the features quickly. So I'm going back to the Explorer, and I'm going to open the microservice, and I will open the editor for the Blocky Editor for the functions. Just remember, this is a Blocky Editor. This Blazedpath has a Blocky style editor for customizing behavior, and it's usually the way you add the blocks is that you use the mouse and you drag the blocks from the list, you drop them onto the canvas, and you continue configuring the expressions with the variables and all the expressions that you want to evaluate in order to customize your behavior. Right now we have implemented the keyboard shortcuts for programming without the need of the mouse. All of the shortcuts that we are going to be talking today, because we are not going to cover every last shortcut there is, you can find them either on the documentation page or in each function, you have the keyboard shortcuts legend, so you can see everything you might need. Maybe there's something you want that we haven't covered here. Everything that's available is inside this little pop-up in here. So as you can probably imagine, first to navigate through a function, remember this is a Blocky editor, it's not a text editor. We are trying to emulate the text edition with the use of the keyboard as much as possible, so that you everything that you've trained until today, you can do so in this editor. But there are going to be a couple of differences that had to do with the fact that this is a blocks and not plain text. So if you go up and down, it's going to start scrolling through the different blocks. Remember, this wasn't available in the previous versions. So if you go from this block to this other block, this is going to select the entire if block, not just the line that says if. If you keep on going down, it's going to go into the context of the if, and if it's a for each or a while or any other kind of blocks that has a chained block, it's going to go into down. So you can go up and down. You can also go right and left because some blocks like the sets or the for each that like we have in here have two sides of the equations. So on one side we have the variables and on the other side we have the expressions. So if you go to the right, it's going to go to expression, and you go to the left, it's going to go to the variables. The same thing with the for each. We have the list and the instance item for the list, so you can go either. And the way you can start using the actual additions for these options is just by pressing enter. So right now I'm standing on an expression, and if I click on enter, it's going to open the expression editor. This expression editor, we have a new multi-line expression editor because sometimes expressions can get a bit lengthy, and maybe you have a function calling another function, and there's a condition that you may call another function if something is null or if something is of a certain value. So for those kind of cases, you can read the legend in here that says switch to multi-line, press Ctrl M. So if you click Ctrl and M, it's going to open a bigger expression editor, which serves the purpose of helping us edit an expression in multi-language. So there's a big
multi-line, yes.
Yeah, multi-line. So there's a little bit of difference between the multi-line and the single line, mainly the enter function, because the multi-line is supposed to work like a normal expression, a normal text editor. So if you start pressing enter, it's just going to go down and it's going to just go to the next line. This doesn't work like this in the single line. Let me go back to the single line. If you press enter here, it's just going to commit your changes. And likewise, if you press escape, you're going to get a warning. And if you press escape and you make a change, it's going to give you a warning that if you want to actually discard the changes that you made to the expression. So that's a little bit of helpful to quickly edit and go through different blocks. So if you click on enter and you want to go back to the multi-line expression editor, you go Ctrl M. And remember, you may not remember every combination, but there's this legend here that says to directly commit everything that it's in here, you just go Ctrl Enter. If you want to discard, you click on Escape, and if you want to just switch back to the other editor, you go Ctrl M. So everything is available to see very quickly in case you don't remember or it's your first time using the keyboard to edit. So this multi-line expression editor is very helpful for those cases that the expression condition gets very complex. So let's go back. Let's go over another keyboard shortcut. So there's the option to drag blocks. So let's say you have this set block and you want to keep using this block, but you want to take this block down a couple of steps because you want to reutilize a certain thing you programmed somewhere else. So you can just hold Alt and go with the down key, and you can drag the blocks up and down. That's very useful. You can also use the usual copy, paste, and cut keyboard shortcuts, which we've had it on a previous version, but right now it's working directly with the Ctrl+X, Ctrl+C, and Ctrl+V, which is very useful. So if you go Ctrl+X, it's going to delete the block, and then maybe you want to go down and just start pasting it a bunch of times. So that's very useful. If you hold Shift, it's going to select a lot of blocks, and you can start copy and pasting blocks, blocks of blocks. So we basically have most of the things you would normally use in a text editor to start programming quickly. So let me undo these changes, and let's go over to how to create new blocks, because the main reason you would start using the mouse in here is to just start drag and dropping new blocks wherever you want, whenever you want them. So now with using Control and Spacebar, you will get a pop-up with the different blocks, so you don't have to actually use the mouse at all to program in here. So let's say you want to add a console log Blocky, you would just start typing console log Blocky. You can use the arrows to switch between different blocks if you don't want to type the whole name. So go console log, click on enter, and it's going to add the console, the Blocky, the whatever you were standing. So if you click on a new block again, you'll see in here that there is a little blinking warning on where the block is going to be appearing. So with these options and going through the rest of the list, which you have on every block editor, you pretty much have a very complete control of everything that you can do with the mouse, that you will now be able to do directly into the keyboard, so you can just focus your both hands on the keyboard and do it like you would on a text editor. So that's as far as I'm going to go today with the keyboard shortcuts. Just remember, it's on the legend, and if you have any other suggestions, please write them on the comments or on our forums. The next topic we wanted to cover is because we have a couple of requests to implement the debugging tool in Blazedpath. Usually, when you are working with the front end and you have a web application, you would probably use the developer tools of the website and don't pretty much need any kind of debugging on your IDE, as long as you're working on your browser. But in cases like the microservice or maybe the process engines, you would probably have to need some kind of debugging because you don't have access through a browser to the functionality of the microservices. So right now, if you look closely next to the other versions, we now have number lines that serve as the text editor lines. Usually that's pretty much standard. So let's add a breakpoint in here. This particular function is executed on the start of this microservice. So whenever I click on the run key in here, it's going to start the microservice, go through this event, call this function, and we are going to get directly in here to our example, so we can quickly see the debugging tool. So let's just go directly into it, click on run, and this is going to open a view for the debugging tool. There you go. So this is the debugging view. As you can probably tell if you look closely on the very left, we have a new icon right now, which is the debugging tool. This is the little bug to indicate that there is a debugging tool. If you want to go back to any other view, you can do so through the menu. But in this debugging view, you can see the normal things you would need from a debugging tool. You can see all the breakpoints that there are on your current debugging session. So you have the threads with the call stacks on the upper left, you have the variable scopes on the lower left, and you have the terminal on the center middle. And of course, in the center, we have the actual function that it's being executed. And right now I am standing on the place on the line I input the breakpoint. So right now you have the continue function, the step over, the step out, the step into, as you would with any other debugging tool. So you can usually you can use the usual hotkeys with the F5 to continue, F10 to step over, F11 to step into, and so on. So right now we had on the first line we have we've saved the list topic results on the topics variable. So on the scope, on this variable here, we can go open the variable and start browsing through the values. And if you keep going on, let's say you want to step over this function, it's going to evaluate and it's going to go into the if, just because this function ends here, returning to the original value because there's nothing else to do. But usually you would go step over, step over, step over, and keep finding whatever you are trying to evaluate. And of course, if you want to evaluate something in the terminal, you can do so. And on our right, we have the visibility of all the breakpoints. So this is, as for the debugging tool, it's very useful. It works pretty fast. So let's jump directly onto the deployment from the Blazedpath cloud to the Google Cloud. Gustavo, do you want to comment on the new versions for the databases that were added on this
Sure.
version?
So we've added support for Redis and Hasselcast. Those now can be part of your architecture, and we'll be covering in future webinars how to take advantage of those new database types, especially for cache, and being able to apply caching techniques in your distributed architecture, especially across microservices. And those are already deployable by Blazedpath Cloud also. And it's a topic on itself that we'll cover separately, but it's basically in preparation for cache that we have already included the Redis and Hasselcast databases. That's a preview to that topic only, and we'll see that in a future webinar.
Perfect. Thank you, Gustavo. So we're going to go over a couple of prerequisites to deploy on the Google Cloud. On our previous versions, we had deployments and builds from the Blazedpath Cloud. Let me jump over to this view. So usually, until now, you've been able to take everything from a Git repository and use a pipeline to pull from a certain branch of your project and build the application from that particular branch, and either start building your own Dockers, Kubernetes, or just the source code. You can download it to your own machine, or you were able to deploy it onto the Blazedpath cloud service that we have. Now we have the option to actually deploy directly onto external clouds. We are going to go over the GoogleCloud today. There's a couple of prerequisites for it, because the responsibility of actually creating a couple of items lies within the administrator of the Google Cloud. So let's talk over the prerequisites you need to actually be able to deploy to your Google Cloud account. The first one is, of course, having an active Google Cloud account with the Kubernetes API activated. So we are going to be deploying on a cluster from an account that's from Blazedpath, and for that we need the kubeconfig file that has no expiration, basically, so we don't have to re-enter the kubeconfig each time we want to create a new deploy. There's a couple of prerequisites. First is that the namespace of the Kubernetes engine has to exist. So basically we are going to be using this existing namespace that you can see in here. That's called webinar demo. And I'm standing here on the object browser because I want to showcase how the Blazedpath Cloud connects directly onto the Google Cloud platform and start creating objects on this namespace for the user of Blazedpath, and consequently deploy the pod. So that's one of the prerequisites. The kubeconfig has to have the permits to actually create object resources for the pod, deployment, services, config map, secrets, service account, and I think that's it. Yeah. So just keep in mind that you have to get you gotta have an existing kubeconfig file, which is very needed. So how do we proceed to this for this procedure? We have to do two things. First, we have to add the environment on the Blazedpath Cloud, which is going to represent the environment for the Google Cloud with a specific namespace. And then we have to create a new pipeline that is going to connect to that specific environment. So let's go over the motions. Sign in again. So let's go to the environments, and in here I'm going to create a new environment, and this environment I'm going to call it webinar demo environment. I'm going to flag this environment, and this is going to be an external environment. And right now I have to type the namespace, which is, as you can see here, webinar demo. So I'm going to type webinar demo. And in here you have to paste the kubeconfig, which I have it on a notepad. So paste the kubeconfig, which is a very big file. But it's not very big, but it's encrypted. So if you click on OK, it's going to connect to the environment. And if you come to the object browser and you refresh, and as you can see on the object browsers, there's already 4 new objects that were created by the Blazedpath Cloud to make possible the deploy of the pod. So let's go over on how to create the actual pipeline. So let's go to pipeline, and I'm going to create a new pipeline, which is going to be called webinar demo pipeline. And in this webinar and in this pipeline, I'm going to create a new build. The first step is going to actually build from this from the Git repo, and always allow the change of configuration, just so if you want to make a new deploy using the same pipeline, it's going to let you change the configuration of the environment. So click on OK. The second step is going to be a deploying step, and in here you have to select the environment you want to deploy on. In here it's the webinar demo environment that we just created, and always allowed to change. So that's pretty much it. Let's go over directly to executions, and we are going to start going onto the motions on how to create the deploy of the pod in the Blazedpath, in the Google Cloud. Yeah. So select the pipeline, webinar demo pipeline, and this is going to deploy directly over there. First step is asking me what I want to do. We have several options here. This step here is in case you want to reutilize a previous image. So this is an image of a reduced version of the quizzes application. I'm going to be using just a previous image, so it doesn't take very long for this webinar. Just this is a previously built image, and it's going to create that deployment configuration and throw it onto the pod in the Google Cloud. So I am going to select to not build either of these microservices and just take the previous image, which has this file name in here. So just click on resume execution. And I'm going to give it a couple of seconds so it starts uploading the image to the Google Cloud. Basically, the next step is to input the config parameters of the environments, which should be, there you go. That's pretty quick because I'm using a previous image. It's not actually building it right now. So subdomain, I'm going to call this small quizzes webinar demo. This is just the subdomain, invalid length, just too lengthy, okay. Quizzes webinar demo. There you go. So these are other config parameters. I'm just going to type something in here so I can resume the execution. There we go. And it's going to start the deployment process. So if I go to the Google Cloud directly in here and I go to workloads, and under the webinar demo namespace, it's starting the deployment of the pods. As you can see right now, it's 0 of 1, so it's still processing. So we have like a couple of minutes in here. Let's say have like 3 or 4 minutes to answer questions on the chat while the deployment of the pod finishes. So what do you say, Gustavo? Do we have any questions that we can answer on the chat while we wait?
Sure. Yeah, so there's one question regarding support for other types of clouds. In particular here, they are asking Darlene about Azure. And well, this is the first, Google Cloud is the first third-party cloud that we natively support from Blazedpath to deploy directly. At the moment, if you want to deploy to Azure or to Amazon for that matter, you will generate the build image, download it and upload it manually, or you can always integrate a Jenkins CI/CD pipeline, continuous delivery pipeline. So you can call the execution, the build execution on Blazedpath Cloud and deploy to Azure from Jenkins. But automatically from Blazedpath or directly from Blazedpath, at the moment, we only do deploy to either Blazedpath Cloud or Google Cloud. And of course, in the future, there are plans on adding Microsoft Azure and Amazon Web Services, and a few others like IBM, IBM Cloud. But at the moment we're beginning with Google Cloud. You have to start somewhere, so here we are at this moment.
Yeah, as I can see here, I already have the one-of-one deployment pod, but I still have like. Let's answer the other question. Well, we'll wait for this to finish.
Sure. Then Narendra asks if deploying on Google Cloud will consume my cloud credits. Yes. Any deploy task that you specify on your pipeline will eventually result in usage charges of your credit or your cloud credits. I mean, and it should be the same charge for either deploying on Blazedpath Cloud for the operation of deploying. It's the same usage charge for cloud credits, whether you deploy on Blazedpath Cloud or Google Cloud or any other third-party clouds when supported. Yeah. So yeah, you have your usage credit charge there. You can consult the amount and the rate on blazepath.com/pricing, and it's a fixed charge per megabyte of the build size when you do the deploy. Yeah.
Perfect. So with those questions, we pretty much got through the time to got the deployment pods deployed. So just remember that with what we just did from the Blazedpath Cloud, the pods for this front end and microservice are already deployed on the Google Cloud. Now the Google Cloud administrator would come in and start going through the policies of how to actually expose this service to the outside and the permits, the balancing load. So that's a very complex subject, and we don't want to get into it like in a 5-minute webinar. So I'm just going to expose through the console to these sites so you can actually see it working, and then you can consult to your Google Cloud expert on actually how to expose these pods to the outside. So this is going to take me like 1 minute. So yeah, my computer is very slow. So no power. Pause. And now I'm just going to be executing through the console using the port forwarding so we can actually see it working. There you go. Port forwarding, running shell. Wait for the shell to open. There you go. Click on enter. Make sure it's authorized. This actually will not show until you actually wait for the forwarding to be ready. So just clicking here, it's going to open a temporal URL. And there you go. You get to see the quizzes manager game, the admin front end of this application directly deploy onto the Google Cloud. It took a minute until the deploy was finalized. Keep in mind that it's a very quick process, but the actual how to actually expose things in Google Cloud, it's kind of exceeds the 5-minute tutorial. So we hope that this small, instructive, and with the prerequisites of what you actually need to create this deploy on a Google Cloud is enough for you, for your tests, for your minimal viable products or your actual final products. And I think that with this we are pretty much done with today's webinar.
Yeah, I wanted to add a remark that as you see, Blazedpath is growing both functionally and as a community. We're adding features to the platform, multi-cloud deployments like here. We'll be adding features on the amount of configuration options that Blazedpath offers for you to deploy on Google Cloud. So it's more streamlined, more direct and faster, simpler for the end user. We realized that it will not cover everything. There will be always some environment configuration that will happen on the third-party cloud. But we are on that path and finding that equilibrium, what makes sense to do on Blazedpath Cloud. That's on that side. And then there are many other features that we'll have planned to add to Blazedpath before the end of the year and into the next year. So we also are enthusiastic to see more downloads and more engagement by development companies that are finding Blazedpath a good fit for large-scale software applications. And yeah, we're happy to have you here and to continue doing this. We'll be seeing you soon, hopefully.
Perfect. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Remember, click on the like and the subscribe on your way out. And remember, just if you have any suggestion, comment, request, go to the comments or go to our forums. We are happy to take your suggestions or requests like we've been doing so far. So with that, thank you everybody for joining, and we'll see you on our next webinar. Bye bye.